So we talked about indexes in general. Let's talk about the first and probably most often used kind of index, which I'll call a metadata index. And the reason I call it a metadata index is because you have an item, and that item is described by a small set of discrete fields. For example, its title, its date, its author, its type, maybe its subject matter, right? And so those are small words and phrases that are all descriptive of the information that's in that item. And generally, that stuff is called metadata. So metadata in general is the information or the data that surrounds the information. So the item has lots of text and pictures and images and whatnot, and then it has a few discrete pieces of information like the title, the date, the author, etc. And we call that metadata. It's really, really easy to make an index out of that metadata. So if you think about it, and we'll take the title index or a date index, it doesn't matter because those are kind of the classic ones. If you think about it, what more do you have to add to a schema, think about it, to support an index on the title or the date of every item? Are there extra pieces of information that have to be stored for that item in order to create that structure? The answer is no. Right? The title is already there. Every item already has a title, every item already has a date. And so in order to create a metadata index, really all you have to do is isolate that data from each of the items, sort it, and present it. And so that's what we'll be doing when we work with metadata indexes in this class. And we'll talk specifically about all the different things that you have to do inside the transform and the instance in order to make that happen. So we talked about the schema, nothing new in the schema. In the instance, the only thing we really have to do is make sure that every item has that information. Every item has a title, every item has a date, etc., so that when we sort them by that, it works out all right. The real action is in the transform. So in a transform, what we have to do in order to present this metadata index from the instance and schema that really are no different than they would be if there was no metadata index, all we have to do in the transform is select every item, and then for each item, put out the title or put out the date, and then put out some link that'll allow you to get to the item that has that title or date. So one more thing that's necessary, in addition to just putting them out, is sorting them in the way that you want. So for example, a title index, we're going to have to alphabetically sort the titles, and then put the title and a link to the item that has that title, right? That would be an alphabetical title index. In a numerical date index, we'd have to sort all those items by date, and then put out the date, and probably also put out the title so that you know which item you're going to, and make that title a link. So in the schema, nothing new to happen. In the instance, just make sure that every item that you're putting in the metadata index has a value. In the transform is where the real action happens, and that action comes in three forms. One is a for each statement that allows you to loop through every item of the particular type that you want the index on. And then a sort statement that's going to say, give them to me alphabetically or numerically. And then finally some statement that allows you to put out the titles and make a link out of them. Okay, so let's take a look at the instance and the schema that are in this topic. And the first thing you want to think about is what would be a likely thing to index on? What would be all the different items or the different elements and attributes of these items that would be useful to sort on? And ask yourself, if I made an alphabetical list or a numerical list of any of these elements or attributes, it would be a useful thing for someone to have. So I'll tell you a few that aren't useful. So inside the body there's a P, inside the P there's an I. I can make an alphabetical index of everything that is in an I tag. Now, maybe there's some reason to do that, but none that I can think of. You'd have an alphabetical list of everything that's italicized. Well, there's not really much use for that, right? But there's many other things in this schema that might be useful to index on. Okay, so that's one of the questions that you'll have to answer. Next down the line, let's take a look at the transform, and the transform has those. We'll take a look at the instance. And the instance, for example, has the date and the title circled. Those are two obvious choices for indexes. And then down below the instance, we have the transform. And the transform has those three aspects that I talked about before. On line 15 is a for each statement. And we're selecting every section item. And every section item. Hi, Guy. There is a doll sheep standing right behind me. Ed, get a picture of that guy. Oh my God, he's just standing right behind me, and he just came up over the cliff. He's so beautiful. If he'll just stand there for another minute, I'll swivel this camera around. Hi, Guy. He's coming right up on us. Oh my God. There he is. He's amazing. Oh, he's outstanding. Oh my goodness, look at you. He's beautiful. Mosey on down to your camera, Ed. Ah, look at him, he's losing his hair because it's getting to be summer. He doesn't seem very frightened of us. I wouldn't want him to come at me, but I don't think he's gonna. He's just beautiful. I can't believe he just came waltzing up out on us. He's so cool. Oh, well, that was totally amazing. And the sheep is just sitting right over there on the top of the knoll, looking out at us, posing as if he was in some kind of gallery. Well, all right. So anyway, in the instance, we have two things that are useful for us to use. We have the date updated and the title. In this case, the title is metadata index, any keyword indexes, etc. And we can make a nice little title index out of that by just sorting the titles alphabetically and creating a link between the name of creating a link that is composed of the title linked to an item. And of course, we get to items by their IDs. So looking down at the transform has an unordered list. That's that UL tag. Inside the UL tag, it has a for each, and it's going to do this for each section, whatever it is inside that UL tag. So for each section, obviously, we want to put out a bullet. That's what the output looks like. Every bullet has a title in it, and those titles are sorted alphabetically. Line 16 is what does that sort. So we have XSL sort, select title. The default sort order is alphabetical, right? So if I don't say anything, it's going to be alphabetical. And the default sort is alphabetical ascending, A to Z. So if I don't say anything more, like I have in line 16, it'll alphabetically sort those titles by ID, by their first letter. And then between line 17 and 21, that's the link. So it's inside a bullet, that's the LI. On line 18, we have the href, and I'm using pound ID. I'm not going to explain that again here because I've explained it a lot of times in other places, but that's creating an internal page link to the item whose ID is to the current item's ID. And then inside the text of the link, I just select the title. Okay, so that line 15 through 22 is the thing that's creating that alphabetical list. Line 15 gives you every section. Line 16 sorts by title. Line 18 creates the link, and the link is to pound ID. And line 19 creates the reference of the link, and the reference of the link is that text, which is the title.